The rain-slicked streets of Seoul gleamed under the neon haze, where the Han River's dark waters whispered secrets to the city that never slept. In a modest hanok tucked away in the shadow of towering skyscrapers, Ji-yeon knelt on the worn tatami mats, her black mourning hanbok pooling around her like spilled ink. At 28, she was a widow twice over, first by accident, now by rejection. Her late husband's family, the Kims, had gathered in the dim parlor, their faces etched with the stern lines of old money and older grudges. The air hung heavy with the scent of jasmine incense and bitter green tea, a ritual that masked the cruelty beneath. "No one wants to accept me as a wife," Ji-yeon pleaded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She clasped the edge of her sleeve, knuckles white. "I've honored your son, I've kept the household, tended the ancestors' shrine, but you treat me like a ghost, fed scraps, denied a voice. If not here, then let me go. I beg you." Elder Kim, her father-in-law, leaned back on his cushioned chair, his eyes cold as polished jade. He was a man of mid-level bureaucracy, his influence bought with favors from shadowy patrons, but tonight he wielded it like a blade. "You think widowhood absolves you? My son died in that car crash because of your bad luck. The family ledger shows debts, his gambling, your dowry shortfall. No one takes a barren widow with a tarnished name. You'll stay until we decide your use." The room fell silent, save for the patter of rain on the tiled roof. Ji-yeon's sister-in-law, Mi-suk, smirked from the corner, her silk blouse whispering as she adjusted her hairpin. "Perhaps sell her off to cover the losses," Mi-suk murmured, loud enough for all to hear. Laughter rippled, sharp and cutting. Ji-yeon rose slowly, her heart pounding against the confines of her grief. She had no children, no allies, only the faint echo of her husband's promise before the twisted wreckage claimed him. "I'll protect you, always." Outside, the storm intensified, thunder rumbling like distant artillery. Ji-yeon slipped into the narrow alley behind the hanok, the chill wind slicing through her thin jacket. She needed air, escape, anything to drown the humiliation. The riverfront was close, its banks lined with joggers and late-night vendors under sodium lamps that buzzed faintly. She walked blindly, the gravel crunching under her slippers, until she reached a weathered bench overlooking the water. The Han's current swirled murky and relentless, mirroring the chaos in her mind. That's when she noticed the man. He stood a few paces away, partially obscured by the steam rising from a street food cart, tall, broad-shouldered, in a tailored black coat that screamed quiet power. His face was half-shadowed, but the sharp cut of his jaw and the faint scar tracing his left cheek caught the light. He wasn't watching the river. His gaze was fixed on her, unblinking, like a predator assessing prey. Ji-yeon tensed, instincts honed from years of navigating the Kims' veiled threats. Was he one of their enforcers, a creditor come to collect? "You look like someone carrying more than rain on your shoulders," he said, his voice low and accented with the rough edge of Busan's docks. He stepped closer, hands visible and empty, no threat yet. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension, the scent of grilled meat mingling with his subtle cologne, something woody and expensive. Ji-yeon straightened, meeting his eyes, dark, piercing, holding secrets she couldn't fathom. "And you look like someone who doesn't belong on a public bench at midnight. If you're here for the Kims, tell them I've nothing left to give." He chuckled softly, a sound that rumbled like the river's undertow. "The Kims, small fish in a big pond. I'm Kang Min-ho, and I'm not here for them." He glanced over his shoulder as if checking the empty path, then back to her. "I overheard your plea inside. Walls are thin in old houses. A woman like you, strong, unbroken, doesn't deserve to be discarded like yesterday's rice." Her pulse quickened. How had he heard? The hanok's garden wall was high, guarded by motion lights that should have flickered. Suspicion coiled in her gut. "Eavesdropping isn't a virtue, Mr. Kang. Who are you, really?" Minho's expression hardened, just a flicker, before softening into something almost gentle. Someone who knows what it's like to be cast out. My family. Let's say they run deeper shadows than the Kims. Debts. Loyalties. They bind tighter than any marriage vow. He pulled a slim card from his coat pocket, embossed with a simple crane emblem, and held it out. No name, just a number. Call if you need an out, but be warned, my world doesn't offer easy exits. She took the card, fingers brushing his, warm, calloused, a stark contrast to the night's bite. As he turned to leave, melting into the rain like smoke, Ji-yeon spotted the black SUV idling at the alley's end. Tinted windows, no plates visible in the downpour. Security detail or surveillance? Her mind raced. The Kims had mentioned vague threats from rivals after her husband's death, unpaid loans tied to underground betting rings. Could this Kang be connected? Back in the Hanok, the family had retired, but Mi-suk lingered in the hallway, her eyes narrowing as Ji-yeon entered, dripping wet. Who were you talking to out there? We saw lights from the window. Ji-yeon pocketed the card, forcing calm. No one, just clearing my head. But as she lay in her sparse room that night, the storm raging outside, she couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on her. The next morning, a subtle discrepancy caught her eye. The family ledger on the low table, left open by Elder Kim. A new entry, scrawled in haste, mentioned a shipment delay from Incheon docks, tied to her late husband's name, and below it, a single word: Kang. Who was this man, stepping into her plea like a shadow from the river, and what price would his protection demand? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The morning sun filtered through the Hanok's latticed windows, casting striped shadows across the low table where the ledger lay like a forgotten accusation. Ji-yeon traced the scrawled entry with her fingertip, the ink still faintly damp from last night's haste. Shipment delay, Incheon, Kim Tae-woo account. Kang, intervention pending. Her late husband's name stared back at her, a ghost in black characters. Tae-woo had always been vague about his work. Import-export, he'd called it, with a wink that masked the late nights and unexplained cash. But Incheon docks, that was the underbelly of Seoul's trade, where legitimate cargo mingled with whispers of smuggling rings and triad debts. And Kang, Minho's face flashed in her mind, his scar catching the river's glow. She snapped the ledger shut, heart thudding against her ribs. The house was quiet, the Kims off to their daily rituals, Elder Kim to his office favors, Mi-suk to her salon appointments that reeked of new money. Ji-yeon slipped the card from her pocket, the crane emblem glinting under the light. No name, just digits that promised more questions than answers. Her fingers hovered over her phone, thumb trembling. Call, and she stepped into unknown waters. Ignore it, and the Kim's cage tightened. The plea from last night echoed in her ears, her own voice, raw and desperate. She dialed. The line clicked after one ring, no greeting, just a low hum like distant traffic. You reached out. Minho's voice came through, smooth as polished stone, carrying the faint echo of an empty room. Smart or reckless? Meet me at the Lotus Pavilion noon. Come alone. The call ended before she could respond. Ji-yeon stared at the screen, pulse racing. The Lotus Pavilion. She'd heard of it, a private tea house in Itaewon, tucked behind high walls and velvet ropes, where deals were sealed over jasmine steam, and the clink of porcelain hid sharper negotiations. Not a place for widows like her. But the ledger burned in her thoughts, a thread pulling her forward. She changed into a simple grey coat over her blouse. No hanbok today, autonomy and fabric, and slipped out the back gate, the gravel path slick from overnight drizzle. The subway ride blurred in a haze of commuters and metallic rattles, the air thick with the scent of street-side tteokbokki and exhaust. Ji-yeon kept her head down, but paranoia prickled her skin. Every reflection in the windows seemed to watch. At Itaewon Station, she emerged into the bustle of foreign accents and neon signs, the midday sun glinting off shop windows. The pavilion was a short walk uphill, past trendy cafes and the occasional black sedan idling too long at curbs. She quickened her pace, the hill's incline mirroring her unease. The tea-house facade was unassuming. Dark wood doors flanked by stone lanterns, steam curling from vents like exhaled secrets. A doorman in a crisp suit nodded her through without a word, his eyes scanning the street behind her. Inside, the air was warm, laced with the floral bite of aged pu'er tea and faint sandalwood incense. Low partitions divided the space into intimate alcoves, silk screens diffusing the light into golden pools. Min-ho waited in the farthest one, seated on a cushioned bench, a porcelain cup steaming before him. He rose as she approached, his black shirt unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the edge of a tattoo. A coiled dragon, inked with the precision of old-school Yakuza influence, though Korean lines twisted through it. "You came," he said, gesturing to the seat opposite. No smile, but his eyes held a spark of approval. A server materialized silently, pouring tea into her cup, hot, amber liquid that warmed her palms. "The Kim's walls aren't as thick as they think, but you're not here for tea." Ji-yeon met his gaze, the steam veiling the tension between them. "The ledger. My husband's name, Incheon shipments, and yours scribbled like a threat. What game are you playing? If this is about debts, the Kims already own me." Min-ho leaned forward, elbows on the low table, his voice dropping to a murmur that blended with the distant hum of a generator outside. "No game. Tae-woo owed my family, supplies that never arrived, favors unreturned. The crash? Convenient timing. Rivals thought it settled the score, but debts linger like river silt." He slid a slim folder across the table, unmarked, its edges crisp. Inside, grainy photos. Tae-woo's car wreckage at dawn, skid marks veering unnaturally, a manifest from Incheon, listing crates of electronics rerouted to Busan under Kang Syndicate seals. "Your in-laws are scrambling to cover it, selling off assets, including you, if the price is right." Her breath caught, the tea's bitterness mirroring the twist in her gut. Photos showed a tailing van near the Hanok weeks before the accident, license plate blurred, but the model matched one she'd seen idling last night. "Surveillance," she whispered, flipping to a transcript snippet. Burner phone logs, calls from Misuk's number to an unknown contact marked collector, betrayal, woven into family silk. They knew. All this time, pretending grief while planning my erasure. Min-ho's hand brushed hers as he closed the folder. A deliberate touch, possessive yet restrained. The Kims swim in shallow water. My world, deeper currents. I can pull you out, Ji-yeon. Protection, a new start. But it comes with loyalty. No half measures. His eyes darkened, the scar tightening with his words. "Accept and you're under my code. No innocence harmed, vows ironclad. Refuse and the river claims its own." She pulled back, autonomy clashing with the pull of his certainty. The tea-house felt smaller, screens whispering like hidden listeners. Outside, a car horn blared, too close, too insistent. Min-ho's posture shifted, alert, his free hand drifting toward his coat pocket. "Decision time, but look, your shadow's grown." Ji-yeon glanced through a screen gap. A figure in a hooded jacket lingered across the street. Phone to ear, gaze fixed on the door. Not random, the way he shifted, mirroring her earlier subway unease. Was it the Kim's enforcer or Min-ho's test? The folder weighed heavy in her lap, clues stacking like dominoes toward a fall. As the server cleared plates with mechanical grace, a subtle click echoed from the back, perhaps a door or something more ominous. Who had followed her here, and what shipment from the docks would drag them both under? Ji-yon's gaze locked on the hooded figure outside the Lotus Pavilion, the man's silhouette blurring against the midday bustle of Itaewon. He shifted his weight, phone pressed to his ear, but his eyes, sharp, unyielding, never left the tea-house door. The steam from her untouched tea curled upward, carrying the faint, grounding scent of fermented leaves, but it did little to ease the knot tightening in her chest. Minho's hand remained steady on the table, though his fingers twitched imperceptibly, a tell of coiled readiness beneath his calm facade. "Stay seated," he murmured, voice low as the hum of the tea-house's air vents. "No sudden moves. He's not one of mine." His eyes flicked to the server, who had paused mid-stride, tray balanced like a shield. A subtle nod passed between them, unspoken protocol in this shadowed world, and the man melted back toward the kitchen without a sound. Ji-yon's mind raced, piecing the fragments, the ledger's hasty note, the photos of Taewoo's crash, Misuk's burner calls. The Kims weren't just discarding her, they were erasing loose ends, and this shadow outside was their net closing in. "If you knew about the surveillance, why bring me here?" she whispered, her voice edged with accusation. Autonomy warred with the allure of his protection, his code, ironclad and tempting, versus the isolation she'd endured for months. Minho's scar pulled taut as he leaned in, the dragon tattoo peeking from his collar like a warning. "Because knowledge is leverage, Ji-yon. The dock's shipment, electronics, they claim, but it's laundered cash and falsified manifests from my rivals in Busan. Taewoo was the middleman, skimming for the Kims. The crash was payback, sloppy enough to leave traces." He tapped the folder lightly, the paper rustling like dry leaves. "Your in-laws are desperate now. That figure? Likely their collector, sniffing for the widow who knows too much. Call him off, or he'll drag you to Incheon himself." The tea-house's silk screens seemed to press closer, diffusing the sunlight into amber veils that hid as much as they revealed. Distant chatter from other alcoves filtered in, tourists haggling over tea prices, oblivious to the undercurrent, but Ji-yon caught the faint crackle of a radio from the back, Minho's security murmuring coordinates. Outside, the hooded man pocketed his phone and stepped forward, his stride purposeful, boots scuffing the pavement. A black van idled at the curb now, engine purring low, its side mirror angled just so, catching the pavilion's entrance. Her pulse thrummed in her ears, the tea's warmth forgotten in her cooling hands. "What's your play, then? You can't just sit here sipping puer while he closes in." The words carried a challenge, testing the possessiveness she sensed in his gaze, the way he watched her not as prey, but as something claimed, yet unbowed. Minho's lips curved faintly, not quite a smile. "My play is yours to join. Say the word and we move. My details 2 minutes out. Armored SUV." False plates routed through Gangnam traffic cams to shake tails. He glanced at his watch, a sleek black band that hid bulkier tech beneath. "But hesitate, and the river's pull gets stronger. Loyalty isn't free, it's forged in the current." The hooded man reached the door, his shadow stretching across the stone lanterns like an omen. Ji-yon's breath hitched. The folder's weight in her lap felt like chains, but Minho's proximity offered a counterbalance, his cologne cutting through the incense with notes of cedar and resolve. She thought of the Hanok's cold mats, the Kim's sneers, the ledger's secrets unraveling her life. No more pleading. "I'm in," she said, voice steady. "But on my terms, no cage, just a chance." He nodded once, sharp and approving, then pressed a concealed button under the table. The alcove's partition slid silently, revealing a rear exit masked as a decorative panel, clever engineering, hidden in plain sight. "Smart choice. Follow close." They rose in unison, Minho's hand grazing her elbow, guiding, not gripping, as they slipped into the narrow corridor. The air back here was cooler, laced with the metallic tang of kitchen exhaust and the low buzz of fluorescent strips overhead. Footsteps echoed from the front. The doorman's measured tone, then a muffled exchange in rapid Korean. "Looking for a woman in grey, widow type. Tell Kang she's not welcome here." The collector's voice, gravelly with impatience. Ji-yeon's skin prickled. He'd described her perfectly, as if the Kims had painted her portrait for the hunt. Minho pushed open a service door to the alley, the sudden rush of humid air hitting them like a wave. Dumpsters lined the narrow path, reeking of fermented kimchi and discarded fish bones from nearby vendors. He scanned the space. Empty, save for a chained gate at the far end, then pulled her toward a side stairwell leading to the upper parking level. Elevators too exposed. Cam's loop, but not foolproof. His breath was even, but she caught the tension in his shoulders, the way he positioned himself between her and the alley mouth. They climbed quickly, the concrete steps echoing their haste, the distant honk of Itaewon traffic a chaotic symphony below. At the top, a sleek black SUV waited, engine idling softly. Its driver, a compact man with a shaved head and earpiece, nodding from the shadows. No plates yet. They'd swapped them en route. A logistics trick Minho explained in clipped tones as he bundled her into the back seat. Leather enveloped her, cool and supple, the faint scent of gun oil lingering from hidden compartments. As the SUV peeled out, tires whispering over smooth asphalt, Ji-yeon twisted to peer through the tinted rear window. The hooded man emerged from the pavilion's side door, phone raised, barking into it. The van lurched forward, but a second figure joined him, taller in a nondescript jacket, pointing toward their escaping vehicle. "They're on to us," she said, gripping the seat's edge. "How many more?" Minho's hand settled on her knee, brief and reassuring, before he tapped the driver's shoulder. "Two tails confirmed. Take the underpass. Lose them in the merge." The SUV accelerated, weaving into the flow of midday traffic, the Han River's bridges looming ahead like steel veins. Ji-yeon's mind whirled. The shipment at Incheon, Taewoo's debts, Minho's rivals. Protection came with threads of its own, binding her to this man whose code promised safety, but demanded her fire. The driver executed a tight turn, dipping into a shadowed underpass where sodium lights flickered on wet pavement from last night's rain. Horns blared as they cut off a delivery truck, the jolt pressing Ji-yeon back. Emerging on the other side, the van and its pursuers were nowhere in sight, or so it seemed. But as they merged onto the Riverside Expressway, a faint glint in the side mirror caught her eye. A motorcycle weaving through lanes, rider's helmet visor down. Too persistent to be coincidence, Minho cursed softly under his breath, checking his phone, a secure app pinging alerts from hacked traffic feeds. Not shaken yet. They've got eyes on the cams. His voice held no fear, only calculation, the scar on his cheek standing out against his flushed skin. Ji-yeon realized then, in the hum of the engine and the river's distant rush, that she'd traded one family's grudges for another's war, but whose betrayal would surface first, the Kim's ledger lies, or the shadows trailing Minho's convoy. The SUV surged along the Riverside Expressway, the Han River a blurred ribbon of slate-grey water to their left, its surface choppy under the afternoon wind that carried the briny tang of distant sea salt. Ji-yeon gripped the door handle, the leather creaking under her fingers as the vehicle weaved through thickening traffic. The motorcycle's glint in the side mirror grew steadier, its rider leaning low, black helmet avoid against the sun-dappled skyline. Seoul's bridges arched overhead like skeletal guardians, their steel girders humming with the passage of trucks and sedans, but none offered cover from the pursuit closing in. Minho's jaw tightened, his phone screen casting a blue glow on his face as he scrolled through the app's feed. live cams from the expressway, dotted with red icons marking potential tails. "He's looping the signals," he said, voice clipped, directing the driver without looking up. "Busan plates, but falsified. Rival crew, not Kim's. They must have bought the tip from Misuk's line." The engine's growl deepened as the driver floored it, merging sharply onto an exit ramp toward the industrial sprawl of Mapogu. Warehouses loomed ahead, squat concrete behemoths ringed by chain-link fences and stacks of shipping containers, their rusted edges painted with faded Hangul warnings. Ji-yeon's mind reeled, the folder from the tea house tucked under her seat like a live wire. Tae-woo's debts weren't just family secrets. They tangled with Min-ho's syndicate, pulling her into a web of manifests and middlemen she'd never imagined. Autonomy felt like a fading echo. Had she truly chosen this, or was it the river's current dragging her under? "How do you know it's not your own people testing me?" she asked, her tone laced with suspicion, eyes flicking to the rear view where the motorcycle darted between cars, impossibly agile. Min-ho met her gaze in the mirror, his dark eyes unyielding, the scar on his cheek a pale slash against his skin. "My code doesn't allow tests on the vulnerable. Loyalty's earned, not tricked." He paused, the SUV jolting over a pothole that sent vibrations through the frame. "But trust, that's the real debt. Tae-woo skimmed from a Busan shipment, fake electronics crates hiding untraceable funds. The crash was their message. Your in-laws covered it with the ledger, but now they're selling scraps to settle, including you as bait." The driver grunted, swerving into a narrower service road flanked by derelict docks, where the river's edge met graffiti-scarred pilings. The air shifted, heavier with the diesel fumes of idling barges and the wet rot of tidal mud. Sodium lights flickered on prematurely, casting long shadows across cracked asphalt, strewn with discarded pallets. The motorcycle revved behind them, closing the gap to 100 meters, its exhaust a sharp bark in the confined space. "Incoming," the driver muttered into his earpiece, Korean terse and coded. "One rider armed likely. Flank him." "No," Min-ho snapped. "We draw him in. Warehouse pull-off. Ji-yeon, stay low." He reached into the glove compartment, pulling a compact scanner. Nothing flashy, just a black market device for jamming signals, its screen blinking with interference waves. The possessiveness in his command grated against her independence, yet in this moment it anchored her. She ducked, heart pounding, the leather seat pressing cold against her cheek. The SUV braked hard, tires screeching as it veered into an open lot beside a looming warehouse, its roll-up door half ajar, revealing stacks of unmarked crates inside. The motorcycle skidded to a halt at the entrance, the rider dismounting with fluid menace, helmet still on, one hand dipping into his jacket. No dramatic draw, just the subtle glint of a suppressed pistol. Common issue for syndicate cleanups, silenced for urban discretion, sourced from Incheon's black market arms routes. Min-ho was out first, door slamming like a gunshot, positioning himself between the bike and the SUV. "Back off, Ji-hoon," he called, voice carrying the weight of old rivalries. "This isn't your lane, the shipment's mine to collect." The rider, Ji-hoon, tilted his head, visor reflecting the warehouse lights in a distorted sheen. "Boss Kang thinks a widow changes the score? Busan's tired of your Busan roots playing Seoul King? Hand her over, the Kims pay double for the ledger's ghost." His accent was thick with southern grit, the kind forged in dockside brawls, and he circled slowly, boots crunching gravel, eyes scanning for backups. Ji-yeon peered through the tinted glass, breath fogging the window. The standoff felt like a chess move, each step calculated against the environment's hazards. Min-ho didn't flinch, his stance wide, hands empty but ready. "You tailed from Itaewon, hacked my cams, sloppy, means your crew's desperate sniffing old manifests." He edged toward the warehouse door, luring the man closer, the scanner in his pocket humming faintly. a low-frequency pulse designed to disrupt comms, buying seconds. Ji-yeon caught a behavioral tell. Ji-hoon's free hand fidgeted with his belt, a nervous tick she'd seen in Tae-woo's associates, signaling a hidden wire or panic button. Betrayal layered on betrayal, the Kims feeding intel to Busan rivals, turning family vendettas into syndicate war. The wind picked up, rattling loose chains on the dock pilings, carrying the distant wail of a barge horn. Ji-hoon lunged, pistol rising, but Min-ho was faster. A sidestep into the warehouse shadow, grabbing a loose pipe from a crate stack as improvised deflection. It clanged against the gun barrel, the impact echoing like thunder in the confined space, sparks flying from the metal kiss. No shots fired. The silencer muffled a dry click, jammed courtesy of the scanner's interference. Ji-yeon bolted from the SUV, adrenaline surging, snatching the folder as she ran toward the fray. "Min-ho, behind you!" A second figure emerged from the warehouse depths, this one bulkier, wielding a crowbar. Ji-hoon's backup sprung from the crates like a trap. The air thickened with the acrid scent of rust and exertion. The river's lap against the pilings, a mocking rhythm. Min-ho pivoted, pipe swinging in a wide arc that caught the crowbar mid-swing, the clash vibrating through the lot. Ji-yeon dodged to the side, heart slamming, spotting a control panel on the warehouse wall, guard rotation override, its keypad glowing faintly. Her fingers flew over the keys, a code pieced from the folder's manifest scraps, 729, the crate sequence. Alarms blared, floodlights snapping on, bathing the scene in harsh white. Ji-hoon staggered back, helmet cracking against a container as Min-ho pressed the advantage. But the second man charged, crowbar whistling. The driver gunned the SUV, ramming the motorcycle aside in a crunch of metal and sparks, clearing an escape path. Ji-yeon sprinted to Min-ho's side, folder clutched like a shield. "We go, now!" Her voice cut through the chaos, autonomy asserting itself in the breach. Min-ho nodded, grabbing her wrist, firm, not crushing, as they dove into the SUV. Tires spun on gravel, the vehicle fishtailing out of the lot, leaving the rivals scrambling in the glare. But as they merged back onto the expressway, Min-ho's phone buzzed. An intercepted message from Busan's line, time-stamped minutes old. "Widow has the manifest. Extract at safe house. Cost, the boss's code broken." Ji-yeon's breath steadied, the river receding in the mirror, but the folder's pages rustled ominously. Protection's price was rising, loyalty tested in the heat of pursuit. What hidden access code in the manifest would force Min-ho to choose between his vows and her freedom? The SUV cut through the fading light of the expressway, Seoul's skyline fracturing into jagged silhouettes against the Han River's deepening twilight. Ji-yeon's fingers trembled as she clutched the folder, its edges frayed from the warehouse scramble, the pages inside whispering against her skin like secrets too heavy to hold. The leather seats creaked under Min-ho's shifting weight beside her, his cologne, a sharp blend of cedar and faint gunpowder, mingling with the recycled air of the vehicle. Outside, the city's sodium lights flickered to life, casting erratic patterns on the tinted windows, while the river's distant murmur faded into the engine's steady hum. Min-ho's phone lay silent now, the intercepted message's glow dimmed on its screen, but its words lingered. "Widow has the manifest. Extract at safe house. Cost, the boss's code broken." He stared ahead, jaw set, the scar on his cheek a stark line in the dashboard's blue illumination. The driver navigated with mechanical precision, weaving past delivery vans and commuter cars, their false plates cycling through a hacked GPS spoof to mimic local taxis. No tails in the mirrors yet, but Ji-yeon felt the weight of unseen eyes. Traffic cams, perhaps, or a drone's quiet shadow over the bridges. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice cutting the tension like a knife through silk. Autonomy demanded answers. She wouldn't be shuttled blindly into deeper shadows. The folder tempted her, but she resisted opening it fully, afraid of what fresh betrayals it might spill. "A safe house in Uido," Minho replied, his tone even, though his fingers drummed a subtle rhythm on his knee, a tell of restrained calculation. Penthouse level, overlooking the financial district. Reinforced glass, private elevator, jammer on the Wi-Fi signals. My crew rotates guards every 4 hours, cross-checked with burner logs. He glanced at her, eyes softening just a fraction. No cage, Ji-yeon. But in my world, safe means layered. Exits, scans, contingencies. The manifest you hold. It's a key to Incheon's vault codes. Busan's after it to reroute shipments, expose old ledgers. If they get you, they break more than debts. The SUV dipped into Uido's gleaming underbelly, where glass towers pierced the night like frozen lightning, their bases humming with the low buzz of generators and the scent of rain-slicked concrete. The driver pulled into an underground garage, barriers rising silently on retinal scan, Minho's alone. A biometric lock that hummed with the click of servos. They ascended in the private elevator, a steel box lined with muted panels, the air cool and filtered, carrying the faint ozone tang of security electronics. Ji-yeon's reflection stared back from the mirrored walls, her grey coat rumpled, eyes wide with the adrenaline's afterburn. The penthouse door whispered open on pneumatic hinges, revealing a space that blended luxury with fortress. Floor-to-ceiling windows, veiled by smart tint, leather sofas facing a wall of screens displaying live feeds from dock cams and street corners. The air smelled of polished oak and fresh linen, undercut by the sterile whir of climate controls. A guard nodded from the kitchenette, stocky, earpiece coiled like a serpent, before vanishing into a side room. Minho gestured to a low-glass table where a decanter of soju waited, its bottle chilled to frost. "Sit. We review the manifest here, away from tales." He poured 2 glasses, the liquid glinting amber under recessed lights, and slid one to her. No coercion in the offer, just a pause for breath in the storm. Ji-yeon accepted, the cool rim grounding her as she spread the folder's contents, manifests yellowed at the edges, stamped with Incheon port seals, handwritten notes in Taewoo script listing crate numbers tied to electronics that masked cash flows, and at the bottom, a scrawled access code, K714 Busan, flanked by a crane sketch mirroring Minho's card. Her pulse quickened, tracing the code with a fingertip. It's not just debts. Taewoo marked diversions, funds siphoned to the Kim's accounts, but rerouted through your rival's shells. The crash site photos show brake tampering, human error, or paid mechanic. Suspicion laced her words, probing his code's edges. Loyalty versus fear churned within her. His protection felt like a vow, yet possessive. Pulling at her independence like the river's tide, Minho sipped his soju, the glass clinking softly as he set it down. His eyes darkened, reflecting the screen's glow. Taewoo was ambitious, prudent enough to skim small, but the Busan crew smelled it. They pressured a garage contact in Mapo, faked the skid with fluid leaks. My code? No innocence in the crossfire. I honored his debt by watching the widow, not claiming her as collateral. He leaned closer, voice dropping to a rumble that vibrated through the table. But you holding that code changes it. K714 unlocks a secondary vault at the docks, ledgers proving the Kim's betrayal, Misuk's calls to Busan. Use it and we expose them. Break it open without my say and it triggers alerts, cops, rivals, chaos. Ji-yeon's grip tightened on the paper, the ink's faint chemical scent rising. Autonomy clashed with the bond forming, his restraint a legacy of losses, perhaps a sister or mother caught in old wars, shaping his iron vows. And if I walk with this? No pledge, just my path. The question hung, testing the push-pull, her ethics demanding space amid his world's gravitational pull. He held her gaze, unblinking. You could, but the shadows don't forget. Busan's already mobilizing. If that message means an infiltration team, burner relays pinging our route. As if on cue, one screen flickered. A grainy feed from the garage below, showing two figures in maintenance jumpsuits tampering with a utility box. Not guards, subtle tells, mismatched badges, hesitant gaits. A false alarm, or staged blackout. Minho rose swiftly, tapping his earpiece. Breach protocol, seal vents, check perimeters. The penthouse lights dimmed fractionally, a backup hum kicking in from hidden generators. Ji-yon stood too, folder in hand, the access code burning like a brand. Outside, the city's lights twinkled mockingly, the Han a black vein pulsing below. Trust versus suspicion peaked. Had Misuk's betrayal reached here, or was it Minho's own crew fracturing under pressure? The first flicker hit then, a power stutter that plunged the screens into static, the window's tint failing to manual opacity. In the sudden gloom, a distant thud echoed from the elevator shaft, jammed or worse. Ji-yon's heart raced. The code in her grasp could save them, but decoding it meant surrendering to his lead. Or did it hide a deeper trap, one that would force Minho to shatter his code for her sake? The penthouse plunged into a stuttering half-darkness, the power flicker stripping the screens to jagged bursts of static that hissed like radio interference. Ji-yon's breath caught in her throat, the soju glass forgotten on the table, its amber contents sloshing faintly in the dim, emergency glow from recessed strips along the baseboards. The air grew thicker, laced with the sharp ozone of failing electronics and the underlying hum of backup generators straining to life. Outside the windows, Yoido's financial towers stood sentinel, their lights unwavering, mocking the vulnerability within these walls. Minho moved like a shadow uncoiling, his hand snapping to a concealed panel beside the kitchenette. "Lockdown sequence! Manual override!" He barked into his earpiece, the words clipped and urgent. The guard from earlier emerged from the side room, compact frame tensed. A compact flashlight beam cutting through the gloom to reveal his drawn pistol. Standard issue, matte black, no shine to catch the eye. Elevators jammed, two on the shaft cam before it cut, jumpsuits, but no clearance ping. The man's voice was gravel-low, laced with the clipped efficiency of dockside drills. Ji-yon's pulse thundered in her ears, the folder's pages crinkling under her grip as she backed toward the windows. The access code, K714 Busan, scrawled in Taiwu's hand, felt like a live ember in her palm. Autonomy surged, a fierce counter to the fear clawing at her edges. She wouldn't cower while Minho's world swallowed her whole. That code, does it tie into your security here? Or is it bait for this? Her voice held steady, probing the boundaries of his possessiveness, the way his body angled protectively between her and the elevator door. Minho's eyes met hers in the flashlight's beam, the scar on his cheek a deeper shadow. It's dockside only, vault access for manifests, but if Busan's infiltrated, they could have spoofed the breach alert from the Ledger's network. My code holds, no innocence, but threats get handled. He pressed a sequence into the panel, and a low rumble vibrated through the floor. Reinforced shutters, grinding halfway down the windows, halting with a metallic groan as the power stuttered again. The thud from the shaft repeated, closer now, followed by the scrape of tools on steel, prying, deliberate, like rats gnawing through insulation. The guard swept the beam toward the elevator doors, their seams glowing faintly from internal pressure. They're cutting the lock, 3 minutes tops. Rear balcony escape? Minho nodded curtly, but his gaze lingered on Ji-yon, a flicker of something raw. Loyalty tested, not by her, but by the fractures in his own ranks. We hold if we can. The manifests our leverage. Expose the Kim's reroutes and Busan backs off. But if it's a turncoat... He trailed off, the implication hanging. Internal betrayal. A guard rotation compromised by old grievances. Perhaps a Busan plant bought with promises of power. Ji-yon flipped open the folder in the dim light, her eyes scanning the manifests by the guard's beam. Subtle tells emerged, a shipping log discrepancy. crate K7 marked rerouted to a Uedo warehouse address, this building's sublevel, disguised as office storage. "They're not just after me," she whispered, piecing it together, the paper's dry rustle underscoring her words. "The code unlocks a local cache here. Taewoo hid backups, ledgers proving Misuk's calls funneled funds to Busan. If they breach, they wipe it all, frame you for the skim." Minho's expression hardened, a muscle ticking in his jaw. "Smart catch. Means the jumpsuits are wired, remote jammers on our burners." He pulled a secondary device from his pocket, a slim black fob that pulsed red, overriding the penthouse's Wi-Fi to a closed loop. The air hummed louder, generators kicking in fully, but the lights only sputtered back to a sickly yellow. Possessiveness warred in his stance. He wanted to shield her, bundle her to safety, but her insight demanded partnership, her independence a spark he couldn't extinguish. A sharp crack echoed from the elevator, metal yielding, doors buckling inward with a shower of sparks. The guard leveled his pistol, beam steady. "Contact!" Two figures spilled out, hoods low, coveralls smeared with grease. Professional infiltrators, moving in sync like they'd drilled the layout. One raised a stun baton, crackling blue, the other a scanner, beeping as it locked on the folder's RFID tag embedded in the manifests. No shots yet. Silent takedown protocol to avoid drawing building security or rival alerts. Minho lunged, tackling the scanner wielder to the polished oak floor in a tangle of limbs and grunts. The impact thudded dully, the man's device skittering toward Ji-yeon, its screen flashing. "Asset located! Extract Widow!" She snatched it, heart slamming, and smashed it against the table's edge. Plastic cracking, circuits frying with a pop of acrid smoke. The guard fired a suppressed round into the baton's wielder's leg, the muffled phut barely audible over the chaos, dropping him with a howl that echoed off the walls. Blood bloomed dark on the floor, the coppery scent cutting through the ozone. But no gore, just the grim reality of a non-lethal hit per Minho's code. The downed infiltrator twisted, revealing a tattoo on his wrist. A Busan anchor, inked crude but unmistakable. "Kang's done," he spat through gritted teeth, voice thick with southern dialect. "The widow's our ticket. Kim's paid triple for the code silence." Betrayal confirmed. Mi-suk's line had sold the penthouse chords, turning family vendetta into a syndicate hit. Minho pinned him, knee to chest, extracting a burner phone with swift efficiency. Who tipped the rotation? "Your boss or mine?" The man smirked, blood flecking his lips. "Both. Legacy debts. Your old man broke a vow in Busan. Now you pay." Minho's face paled fractionally, the revelation striking deeper than the fight. A past loss, perhaps his father's code shattered in a dockside deal gone wrong, shaping Minho's iron restraint. Ji-yeon stepped forward, folder secure, her ethics clashing with the fear. Expose it all, or let the shadows claim the guilty. The guard zip-tied the intruders, hauling them to a utility closet with reinforced locks, while Minho keyed the balcony access. Cool night air rushed in, carrying the river's briny whisper and the distant thrum of helicopter blades, routine patrols or incoming extraction. We moved to the tunnels below. "Service access, unmonitored," Minho said, his hand brushing hers, guiding, yielding to her resolve. "The code stays with you. Use it to burn the Kim's ledgers, but trust this, my vow holds, even if it costs the throne." They descended a hidden stairwell, concrete steps slick with condensation, the air growing damp and echoing with the drip of pipes. Behind them, the penthouse's generators whined to a halt, plunging it to black, a staged blackout courtesy of the breach. Ji-yeon's mind raced, the anchor tattoo, the father's broken vow, the manifest's hidden cache below. Loyalty forged in this descent, but what institutional limit, a cop's blind eye or a rival's deeper plant, would unravel Minho's code before they surfaced? If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The stairwell's concrete walls pressed in like the jaws of an ancient beast, slick with condensation that dripped in rhythmic plinks, echoing off the low ceiling and mingling with the distant rumble of Yoido's subway lines far below. Ji-yon's slippers scuffed against the uneven steps, each descent pulling her deeper into the underbelly of the city, where the air turned thick and musty, laced with the metallic tang of rusting rebar and the faint, oily residue of forgotten machinery. Minho led the way, his broad frame casting a long shadow in the beam of a tactical flashlight clipped to his belt, its harsh white light carving stark contrast from the gloom. The guard trailed behind, his footsteps measured, pistol holstered but thumb hovering near the grip, a silent testament to the fragile line between escape and ambush. Ji-yon's mind churned, the folder tucked inside her coat like a beating heart against her ribs. The access code, K714 Busan, unlocked more than vaults. It peeled back layers of Taiwu's duplicity, revealing how he'd woven the Kims into Busan's web, siphoning funds through falsified shipping logs that now threatened to drown them all. Autonomy burned in her chest, a defiant flame against the pull of Minho's world. His code a shield, yes, but one that bound as tightly as the Kim's grudges. "That tattoo on the infiltrator," she said, her voice echoing softly, cutting through the drip-drip of water. "Your father's vow. What did he break? If legacies chain us, I need the truth, not shadows." Minho paused at a landing, the flashlight beam swinging to illuminate a rusted service door etched with faded hazard warnings. His breath came even, but she caught the subtle tension in his shoulders, the way his free hand flexed, a behavioral tell, like the fidgeting Ji-hoon had shown at the warehouse. "Old debts from the docks," he replied, voice low and gravel-edged, carrying the weight of Busan's salty winds. "My father ran shipments in the 90s, legit tea routes masking triad cash. He vowed no innocence touched, but a rival's family got caught in a warehouse fire. Staged, they said, but the smoke took a child. Busan branded him oathbreaker. I've spent years mending it, one restrained hand at a time." He met her eyes, the scar on his cheek catching the light like a fault line. "You holding that code? It's testing me. Expose the Kims, and I honor his ghost, but if it pulls you under—" The guard cleared his throat from behind, his earpiece crackling faintly. "Perimeter clear so far, boss. But the penthouse feed's looping. Someone's masking their trail with a signal repeater." Ji-yon nodded to herself, piecing the investigative thread. The infiltrator's scanner had pinged the folder's RFID, a subtle tech common in port logistics for tracking cargo manifests. Busan wasn't just chasing debts, they wanted the full ledger chain. Access codes linking to discrete servers in Incheon's secure vaults. Human error had left traces, Mi-suk's burner calls time-stamped to the same night as Taewoo's crash, a guard rotation gap bought with a rival's bribe. Minho shouldered the door open with a groan of hinges, revealing a narrow tunnel that snaked beneath the financial district's foundations. Dim emergency bulbs strung along the ceiling buzzed to life, casting a jaundiced glow over pitted concrete floors strewn with debris, discarded cables, shattered glass from old floods. The air hummed with the vibration of passing trains, a low thrum that resonated in their bones, while the scent of damp earth and stagnant water seeped from cracks in the walls. They moved single file, Minho's flashlight sweeping ahead for tripwires or hidden panels, his possessiveness evident in how he glanced back every few steps, ensuring her pace matched his without slowing. Loyalty versus fear twisted inside Ji-yon like the tunnel's curves. Minho's code offered protection, a found family forged in peril, but at what cost to her independence? She pulled the folder halfway out, scanning a new page by the flickering light, a ledger excerpt handwritten in code, numbers aligning with subway maintenance schedules, hinting at a rendezvous point under Mapo station. "This isn't just docks," she murmured, holding it up. "Daewoo scheduled pickups here, burners dropped in utility boxes. If Busan's planted eyes, they're waiting." As if summoned, a distant clank echoed down the tunnel, metal on metal, too deliberate for settling pipes. Minho froze, killing the flashlight, plunging them into near blackness broken only by the bulb's weak halos. "Down," he whispered, pulling her against the wall, his body a barrier of warmth and resolve. The guard melted into the shadows opposite, pistol drawn with a soft click. Footsteps approached, muffled but multiple, 3 by the cadence, accompanied by the faint beep of a handheld scanner, its signal bouncing off the walls like a predator's ping. Ji-Yun's heart hammered, the folder's edge digging into her palm. She spotted a side alcove, a forgotten utility niche, half obscured by a chain-link grate, its lock rusted but intact. "There, jam it with the code sequence." She breathed to Minho, her mind racing through the manifest patterns, 7 to 2 to 9, from the warehouse panel, twisted to fit. He nodded, slipping forward in a crouch, fingers working the grate's hasp with a tool from his pocket, a slim pry bar sourced from any syndicate safehouse kit. The footsteps grew louder, voices murmuring in southern-accented Korean, "Signals strong, widow's tag. Boss says take the boss too, break the code clean." Tension coiled tighter, the tunnel's confines turning hazardous, the uneven floor slick with seepage, a blackout risk if they tripped a breaker. Minho wrenched the grate free with a muffled scrape, gesturing her inside first. The niche was cramped, smelling of mildew and exposed wiring, barely space for 2. She squeezed in, the guard covering their flank as Minho followed, pulling the grate shut just as the beam of another flashlight swept the main path. Shadows danced, the intruders pausing yards away, their scanner beeping erratically, interference from the tunnel's metal mesh, a natural jam. Ji-Yun pressed against the wall, Minho's arm steady around her shoulders, not gripping, but anchoring, his breath warm on her neck. "They'll pass if we hold," he murmured, the intimacy of the space amplifying the push-pull. His vow a promise of safety, her ethics demanding she wield the code herself. But the ledger's page rustled faintly in her hand, drawing the scanner's whine closer. One intruder veered toward the alcove, boots scuffing the grate. "Here! Faint echo!" The guard fired first, a suppressed round shattering the scanner with a fut and spark, the tunnel erupting in shouts and the acrid bite of cordite. Minho burst out, tackling the nearest man into the wall with a thud that shook dust from the ceiling. Ji-Yun followed, folder secure, spotting a wall-mounted panel, the tunnel's emergency override, its keypad glowing faintly. Her fingers danced over it. K714, adapted to flood the lights. Alarms wailed, strobes flashing blinding white, disorienting the intruders as the guard downed another with a precise shot to the shoulder. They fled deeper, the tunnel branching into a service junction where the river's underground flow gurgled through grates, carrying the chill of the Han. Minho's side bled from a glancing slash, shallow, from a hidden knife, but he waved off aid, his code unbroken, no innocence even in retreat. The cache is close, sub-level vault under the station, but that tip came from inside, a plant in the rotation. Betrayal's sting hit Ji-Yun hard, whose subtle tell had sold them out. A cop's overlooked report or Minho's own lieutenant nursing old Busan scars. As they emerged into a dimly lit maintenance room, generators humming like watchful beasts, a burner phone buzzed in Minho's pocket. An intercepted relay. Vault breached remotely. Code used. Kim's claimed the widow's end. Ji-Yun's blood ran cold. Had she triggered it unwittingly, or was the true unraveling a deeper fracture in the code itself? The maintenance room's generators thrummed like a faltering heartbeat. their low vibration rattling the loose grates overhead and stirring the damp air into eddies that carried the chill seep of the Han's underground flow. Ji-yon's blood iced as Min-ho stared at the burner-phone's screen, its glow etching harsh lines on his face, the scar on his cheek twisting with the flicker. Vault breached remotely. Code used. Kim's claim the widow's end. The words hung, a digital noose. The relay's timestamp mere minutes old. Too precise for coincidence, too damning for accident. Her fingers tightened on the folder, the paper's edges damp from the tunnel's mist. When I overrode the panel? Autonomy fractured under the weight. She'd acted on instinct, her ethics demanding action, but now suspicion clawed. Had the code's adaptation triggered a backdoor, a subtle trap woven by Taewoo's hand? Min-ho pocketed the phone, his side's wound seeping darker through his shirt, the coppery tang mixing with the room's mildew. No, this is layered, remote access from a Kim's server, piggybacked on Busan's jammers. Mi-suk's line, likely. Her calls matched the timestamps. He winced, pressing a hand to his ribs, but his voice held steady. The code's restraint a legacy he wouldn't shatter, even bleeding. The guard scanned the room's lone door, a heavy steel slab etched with subway maintenance seals. His flashlight beam catching a faint wire anomaly at the hinge, a trip sensor blinking red. They're flushing us out. Tunnels flood on command here, old emergency protocol but weaponized. Outside, the subway's rumble swelled, a train barreling through the adjacent line, shaking dust from the ceiling in grey veils. Ji-yon traced the ledger's final page, a sketched map of the sub-level vault, access via a utility ladder descending to the river's flood barrier. The cache is below, ledgers proving the alliance. Kim's and Busan, splitting Taewoo's skim. We expose it or they bury us with the water. Min-ho nodded, eyes locking on hers, possessiveness yielding to partnership, his vow a bridge over the fear. Ladder first. Guard, cover the breach. They moved, the door groaning open on oiled tracks, revealing a grated platform overlooking a sheer drop into the flood tunnel. The air plunged colder, laced with the river's briny rot and the electric sizzle of distant conduits. Min-ho descended first, flashlight clipped to his belt, illuminating rungs slick with condensation. Ji-yon followed, the metal biting her palms, each step echoing like a countdown. The guard brought up the rear, his suppressed pistol a shadow in his grip. Halfway down, the first hazard struck. A blackout ripple. The emergency bulbs winking out, plunging the shaft into inky void, broken only by the ladder's faint phosphorescence. Water gurgled below, rising fast, lapping at the lower rungs with icy fingers. "Floodgates opened!" Min-ho called up, his voice muffled by the rush. "Institutional limit city protocols but hacked, hold tight." Ji-yon's legs burned, the folder wedged in her coat. Autonomy a mantra against the pull. No more victims, no more pleas. A splash echoed, something heavier than water, and the guard's beam swept down, a great panel shifting, two figures in waders emerging from a side conduit, their faces masked, tools glinting. "Busan, clean up," the guard muttered, firing a warning round that ricocheted off the concrete with a high whine. Sparks dancing like fireflies. The figures ducked, but one hurled a weighted line, a grapnel hook snagging the ladder, yanking hard. The structure shuddered, bolts groaning under the strain. Min-ho kicked it free, the effort tearing his wound open further, a grunt escaping him as dark blood pattered onto the rising water. Keep descending, vaults sealed against floods. Loyalty surged in Ji-yon. She reached the bottom, splashing into ankle-deep current, and pried the vault door with a lever from the guard's kit. Common logistics tool, rusted but effective. The door yielded with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a cramped chamber lined with server racks and steel files, the air stale with the hum of cooling fans and the dry scent of archived paper. Screens flickered to life on her touch, displaying digital ledgers, Mi-suk's voice logs, timestamps aligning with Busan transfers. Elder Kim's signatures on reroute manifests, even a video snippet of the crash setup, a mechanic pocketing cache in a Mapo garage. "It's all here," she breathed, downloading to a thumb drive from the panel. Quick, credible tech, no miracles. But the water climbed, now knee-high, tugging at her legs like insistent hands. Minho dropped beside her, swaying, the guard hauling him upright. "Upload it. Expose via anonymous relay. Cops get the Kims. Busan fractures without proof." His hand found hers, brief and warm, the push-pull resolving in shared resolve. As she keyed the code, K714, into the terminal, alarms blared outside, the flood peaking in a roar. The upload beamed out, a digital flare to secure channels. News feeds, anti-corruption lines, rivals' backdoors. Victory's cost hit then. Minho slumped against the wall, wound exposed, the river claiming inches. "Go!" he urged, voice rough. "My crew's en route. Extraction barge from the docks." Ji-yeon refused, binding his side with a torn ledger page and her scarf, triage born of hospital echoes from her widow's vigils. The guard boosted them to a higher ledge as water surged, the vault sealing behind with a final click. They emerged into a service tunnel, sirens wailing above. The Han's fury contained by city limits, but not without scars. Busan's alliance crumbled in the relay's wake. Arrests at Incheon. Misuk's flight halted at the airport, Elder Kim's favors evaporating like mist. Hours later, in a riverside safe house, modest with tatami mats and the soft patter of rain on paper screens, Minho stirred on a futon, bandaged and pale, the doctor confirming no deeper damage. Human error in the blade's angle, survived by his code's caution. Ji-yeon sat beside him, the thumb drive discarded, its secrets now public memory. The threat had been real, organized in boardrooms and back alleys, but victory carved exposure. Minho's syndicate weakened, his throne precarious, a sacrifice of power for truth. He opened his eyes, finding hers. "You didn't run. That's the treasure, not vaults or codes, but this." His hand covered hers, no possession, just alliance. "A pledge, if you'll have it." "No cage, just us against the current." She nodded, the pull yielding to chosen bond, trust forged in tunnels, family found in shadows. Loyalty outlasted the spoils. The river whispered on, but their vows echoed louder, a legacy rewritten in restraint and fire. The rain eased outside, the Han's waters settling into quiet flow, carrying away the old grudges like silt. In the warmth of the safe house, with the scent of steamed rice drifting from the kitchen, where the guard prepared a simple meal, Ji-yeon realized the adventure's true yield. Not power's throne, but the memory of hands linked in the dark, a code shared, unbreakable. They had overcome the depths, emerging not as boss and widow, but as partners in a world remade by their defiance. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.